everyone, welcome back to another session. This is part 2, grade 6, CBSE, chapter 6, new questions and ideas. I hope you all are doing fine. So let's get started. In the last session, we covered these two topics in detail with the map exercise. Today, we are going to talk about Jainism. What do you understand by Sangha, and also monasteries. So let's talk about Jainism. You might have seen people like this. You might have seen them wander from place to place. We'll understand who are they. We'll get to know them better. In Jainism, we've got 24 Tirankaras. Let me explain what you understand by Tirankara before I show you Vardhaman Mahavira, who was again born around 2500 years, as we saw Buddhism also, Lord Buddha also taking birth 2500 years ago. Around that time we saw the birth of Mahavira. So in Jainism, Tirankara basically means a spiritual teacher. A spiritual teacher who is supposed to spread the message wide and far. So we've got here Mahavira. So he was 24th Tirankara around that time, and he was born 24 or 2500 years ago. He was born as a Kshatriya prince. As I told you, Kshatriya, in the last class also I told you what do you understand by the term Kshatriya. We've got social orders in India. So out of those four Varna system that we have, Kshatriya means the warriorhood. Right? Those people who are related, who take care of the defense, they are the warriors. So he was born to a warriorhood tribe, and he was born in Vaji Sangha. I'll show you on the map in the last class. If you guys remember, here I talked about this Vaji Sangha. There's something very special about Vaji. If you want to know what is so special about Vaji, what was the system of governance in Vaji, you'll have to check the videos related to chapter 5. Right? So what happened is, Mahavira, once he turned of a reasonable age, let's say 30, he turned 30 at that time. He left his place. He left the comfort of his house. He was a prince. Mahavira was a prince. So he left the comforts of his house at the age of 30, and he wanted to lead a lonely, isolated life so that he is able to attain enlightenment. So for 12 long years, he meditated. He had a very hard life. He stayed in the forest. He left his place. It was terrible. And then he learned a very simple doctrine. He said, if you want to know the real meaning of life, if you want to know what truth is, you must leave your home. And you must follow the principle of ahimsa, which means do not hurt anyone. Do not hurt anyone. Do not kill anyone. All beings are the same till the time they have life in them. They all feel that the life is very dear to them. Animals, beings, plants, everybody feels life is very dear to them. So everybody could understand his messages because he conveyed his messages in a very simple and easy language that everybody could understand. That's called Prakrit. So Prakrit had different forms, right? If it's being spoken somewhere in the north, it had different version of Prakrit. Prakrit was there. But of course, it means that if you're speaking somewhere in the north, you have different kind of Prakrit. Here, as per the requirement of the people, he used to mold Prakrit, but he spread his message to a lot of people. For example, I talked about the Magdha Empire. If you guys remember, in the last session, I talked of Magdha Empire. So if Prakrit was being taught to the people living in Magdha region, it was called Magdi. Yes, it had the tinge of Prakrit, but it's called Magdi. So all the people who followed Mahavira, they were known as Jans. Jan comes from the term Jina, which means conqueror. So he taught people to have simple life, to beg for food, live in absolute honesty, do not steal even if nobody is offering you food, live the life of celibacy, which means do not get involved into the marriage system. And also give up your clothes. No materialistic things should exist in your life. Because that gives you the craving to have more and more. So that means he followed very strict rules related to life in order to have a clear message and understand what is the truth. Many people left their houses to know the new way of life, to know about truth. And many of them, they started to support the other people who left, because there needs to be somebody who's going to offer food to others who've left their places. So these Jainist people, they were basically, more or less, they were traders. Why they were traders? Because they can still exist and have a life without harming an insect, right? Without killing an insect unnecessarily. But it is very difficult for the farmers to survive like this, because farmers, in order to make sure that they exist for long, in order to feed their family, they have to kill the insects to protect their crops. So it was very difficult for them to follow those strict rules, to not harm any living being, to not kill any living being. So his message, Mahavira's message, it was spread wildly to different parts of India. May it be North India, may it be Gujarat, may it be parts of Tamil Nadu, may it be Karnataka. His teachings spread like wildfire, and we've got his followers who transmitted his ideas, transferred his ideas like diseases to different parts of the world. A lot of his thoughts were written down, and they have been collected here. Can you see this place, Valabhi, that's in Gujarat? So his teachings were followed by the people and transferred to the other people orally also, but they've also made a record of this, and we find it at Valabhi, that's in Gujarat. Now, since we're talking of Lord Buddha and Mahavira, so there's another topic that we have to cover: Sanghas. Right? As you know, there were some group of people who left their house to attain true knowledge. So, of course, there needs to be a place where they could stay. Those places we'll read in the later section, but these group of people who left their houses, they were known as Sangha. So there were strict rules written for these Sanghas, and they were written in a book that is called Vinaya Pitaka. When I talk of Buddhism, these rules have been clearly mentioned in the book in a written format, and there are different branches of men and women when I talk of Sangha. Men joined as per their wish. But if women had to join, definitely if they were slaves, they had to take permission of their masters. If the children were slaves, they would also had to take permission of their masters. They had to take permission of their parents. And if it is a woman, definitely she has to take permission from her father or maybe her husband, which gives us the idea that it was more or less an authoritarian society back then, where men could join the Sangha, all men could join them, but if women and children had to join it, they had to seek permission. In Sangha, the life was quite simple and decent. They went from one place to another. They had more or less, important thing was they had to collect food for themselves to survive. So you might have seen these people, bhikkhus. We also call them as beggar. That does not mean that they are literally they're beggars, but means they call us beggar, bhikkhus who travel from one place to another to get food. You also call them as bhikkhunis, but to get food to help each other. They also held meetings within the Sangha. And those people who could join this Sangha, the group, it was not only men, women and children, but there was a special case of people who could join this. For example, those special set of people who joined included some of the Brahmins, Kshatriyas were allowed, even the merchants or the traders were allowed, laborers were allowed, slaves were allowed, barbers were allowed. These people were allowed along with courtesans. Now you might be wondering, ma'am, what do you understand by this? So this means a lady who has relations with a lot of people. So back then it was easy. Like women were treated more like a slave. So you can say like women slaves were also allowed. Because life was the way it had to be. People were living like that. And many of them who gathered there, collected there, they started to write the teachings of Lord Buddha and composed beautiful poems out of this, out of their lifestyle. And we've got all those compiled in one form or the other. And this brings us to the last topic, where did they live? If they didn't have a fixed place to live. So they lived in these monasteries. Both Jainas and Buddhist people, they used to live in this monastery during difficult time, rainy season, and these were temporary shelters for them that were built. It could be natural caves in the hilly areas like this. And the earliest known monasteries, they were called viharas. Generally, the land was given by a rich person. They used wood, brick to make them. So generally you have a cave that's dug and then people live in it. So the land for these viharas, they were basically donated by the rich kings, landowners, kings, and some local people used to come and offer these people medicine, clothes, and other stuff. So here who lived? They were monks and nuns. Isn't it interesting the kind of life these people lived? So that's all for today's session. That brings us to the end. In case you liked the session, please do not forget to like, share and subscribe. Thank you.